Chapter 1. Don't sweat. The small stuff life is full of little moments that test our patience. A misplaced key, a rude comment, a traffic jam on the way to work. These small things can so easily spiral into big problems if we let them. For many of us, stress doesn't come from life's major challenges, but from the way we respond to these tiny, everyday irritations. The truth is, most of the things we worry about don't really matter in the long run. They only seem important because we give them too much of our attention. Think about the last time you lost your temper over something small. Maybe someone interrupted you mid-sentence, or a coworker took credit for your idea, or your phone battery died when you needed it most. In that moment, frustration took over. Your heart raced. Your mind replayed the event over and over, and for hours, that single irritation colored your entire day. Now, looking back, did it truly deserve all that energy? Probably not. We live in a world that constantly encourages urgency. Everything feels like it must be done now. Messages answered instantly, problems solved immediately, goals achieved yesterday. But not everything is an emergency. When we treat every small inconvenience as a crisis, we exhaust ourselves emotionally and mentally. It's like carrying a heavy backpack filled with tiny stones. One might not weigh much, but together, they become unbearable. Richard Carlson, the author of Don't Sweat the Small Stuff, beautifully reminds us that peace begins the moment we stop magnifying the minor. He once used the example of driving. Imagine you're peacefully on the road listening to music when suddenly another driver cuts you off. Instantly, anger flares up. You might honk, mutter under your breath, or even let that frustration follow you for the rest of the day. But pause for a moment. What actually happened? A stranger in a hurry made a careless move. Nothing more. Your safety wasn't truly compromised. The incident was over in seconds, yet your reaction extended it for hours. Now imagine a different response. Instead of reacting with anger, you take a deep breath and let it go. You remind yourself that the other driver's behavior has nothing to do with you personally. You choose peace instead of irritation. Suddenly, your energy stays intact. You arrive at your destination calm, not fuming. The situation hasn't changed, but your perspective has. And that changes everything. That's the essence of not sweating the small stuff. It's about reclaiming your peace by choosing where to focus your attention. Every day presents dozens of small irritations, delays, disagreements, disappointments. But each one also offers a choice, to react with anger or to respond with grace. The moment you realize you have that power, life begins to feel lighter. One simple exercise that can help is asking yourself this question whenever you feel tension rising. Will this matter a week from now? Most of the time, the answer is no, and when it's no, it's a gentle reminder to let go. The situation loses its grip over you. You begin to laugh more, forgive faster, and move on with ease. Learning not to sweat the small stuff doesn't mean ignoring problems or pretending everything is fine. It means seeing things in proportion. It's about recognizing that you don't have to let every bump in the road shake your peace. You can handle challenges without losing your calm. You can care deeply without being consumed. There's a story of a teacher who held up a glass of water before her class. Everyone expected her to ask if the glass was half empty or half full. Instead, she asked, "How heavy is this glass?" The students gave different answers, 100 grams, 200 grams, 300 grams. She smiled and said, "It doesn't matter how heavy it is. What matters is how long I hold it. If I hold it for a minute, it's light. If I hold it for an hour, it begins to ache. If I hold it all day, it becomes unbearable. The weight doesn't change, my tension does." That's exactly how stress works. The longer we hold on to small frustrations, the heavier they become. Letting go doesn't mean denying what happened. It means refusing to let it control you. Try this. The next time something small annoys you, a long line, a slow reply, a critical comment, pause for 3 seconds. Take a breath. In those 3 seconds, you give yourself a gift, the power to choose peace. That tiny pause breaks the chain reaction of irritation that often follows. Over time, those pauses accumulate into a calmer, happier life. The truth is, Peace doesn't come from a life without problems. It comes from a mind that doesn't let every problem steal its balance. The small stuff will always be there, the traffic, the noise, the unexpected changes. But you don't have to carry them all with you. You can acknowledge them, learn from them, and then gently let them go. When you stop sweating the small stuff, you begin to notice beauty where you once saw annoyance. You appreciate the slowness of a line because it gives you a moment to breathe. You smile at the person who cuts you off because you realize anger won't make the journey shorter. You start to live from a place of calm instead of reaction. So today, remind yourself, not everything deserves your energy. Save it for what truly matters. The people you love, the goals that inspire you, the moments that make life rich and meaningful. Because when you stop letting the little things steal your peace, you make space for the big things. Joy, clarity. Love had to take root and grow, and that's the quiet secret to a peaceful life. It's not about fixing everything. It's about learning to let the small things pass without letting them disturb your heart. Chapter 2. Make peace with imperfection, perfection. The word itself sounds so desirable. We grow up believing that to be perfect means to be successful, admired, and happy. We chase flawless grades, perfect relationships, spotless homes, and ideal bodies. But somewhere in this chase, we forget that perfection doesn't actually exist. Life is beautifully uneven. People make mistakes. Plans change. Things break. And when we stop resisting this truth, when we learn to make peace with imperfection, life becomes softer, kinder, and far more joyful. The need for perfection often hides behind good intentions. We want to do our best, to give our all, to create something beautiful. There's nothing wrong with that. The problem begins when doing your best turns into never good enough. When you start criticizing yourself or others for every small flaw, you rob the present moment of its peace. You create a world where happiness is always delayed, always waiting until things look exactly right. Think of how much energy is lost in trying to perfect what doesn't need to be perfect. You clean your home, but then notice a tiny stain and feel irritated. You write a report at work, but instead of feeling proud, you reread it 20 times searching for mistakes. You look in the mirror and focus only on what you wish you could change. The result is the same every time: restlessness. Because perfection is a moving target. The closer you get, the more it slips away. Richard Carlson reminds us that life doesn't need to be flawless to be wonderful. The people we love most aren't perfect, and neither are we. And that's exactly what makes us real. Imagine if everything in life were perfect. No mistakes, no surprises, no growth. It would be dull, predictable, and lifeless. The little imperfections, the quirks, the flaws, the things that don't go as planned, are what give life its texture and depth. Once you start noticing the beauty in imperfection, everything changes. The crooked smile of a loved one becomes endearing. The messy kitchen after a family dinner becomes a reminder of laughter and connection. The typo in your presentation becomes a moment to laugh at yourself instead of scolding yourself. Life begins to feel lighter when you stop fighting it and start flowing with it. One of the most freeing realizations you can have is that you don't have to fix everything. Some things are meant to be slightly out of place. The goal is not perfection, it's peace. When you accept this, you begin to notice small joys that perfectionism once blinded you to. You start to enjoy progress instead of demanding flawlessness. You see your life as a work in progress, not a final exam to be graded, but a journey to be lived. Try this small shift. The next time something doesn't go as planned, instead of reacting with frustration, take a breath and whisper to yourself, "It's okay." These 2 words carry enormous power. They remind you that mistakes don't define you. They remind you that growth comes from experience, not perfection. Perfectionism often comes from fear: the fear of being judged, the fear of failure, the fear of not being enough. But the truth is, no one remembers your flaws as sharply as you do. People remember how you made them feel, not whether everything you did was flawless. The crack in a handmade mug doesn't make it worthless. It makes it unique. Likewise, your imperfections make you authentic. Here's a story to remember. A young artist once spent weeks painting a single piece. Every time she thought it was finished, she found a small detail to change, a line too thick, a color too pale. Her teacher watched silently until one day he said, "You've already created something beautiful, but if you keep chasing perfection, you'll never let beauty exist." The artist finally understood that beauty doesn't demand flawlessness. It thrives in sincerity. She stopped over-polishing and started painting from the heart, and that's when her work truly came alive. Making peace with imperfection doesn't mean lowering your standards. It means freeing yourself from unrealistic ones. It means celebrating progress, forgiving mistakes, and remembering that your worth isn't tied to flawless results. When you embrace imperfection, you also embrace compassion for yourself and for others. You stop expecting life to always be neat and predictable, and you learn to laugh at the little messes instead. So the next time you notice something out of place, pause. Instead of correcting it immediately, see if you can find beauty in it. Maybe the slightly burned toast smells like effort and care. Maybe the plan that didn't work out led you somewhere better. Every imperfection carries a quiet message. Life doesn't have to be perfect to be beautiful. Let go of the idea that you'll finally be happy when everything falls into place. Happiness isn't waiting at the end of perfection. It's found in the acceptance of what already is. When you make peace with imperfection, you stop trying to control everything, and in doing so, you rediscover the freedom to live, love, and breathe deeply again. Chapter 3. Be aware of the snowball effect of your thinking. Our minds are extraordinary, creative, intelligent, capable of deep reflection and problem-solving. But left unchecked, that same power can turn against us. A single thought can grow, twist, and expand until it feels like an unstoppable storm inside our heads. This is what Richard Carlson called the snowball effect of thinking. It starts small, a passing worry, a brief irritation, and before you know it, it's rolling downhill, gathering more and more mental weight until it feels overwhelming. We've all experienced this. You wake up in the middle of the night and suddenly remember something you forgot to do. A message left unanswered, a bill not paid, a task still pending. Instead of jotting it down and going back to sleep, your mind starts racing. You imagine the consequences, the people you might disappoint, the worst possible outcomes. What began as a small reminder turns into a restless night filled with anxiety. The next morning, you're exhausted, not from physical work, but from mental overthinking. This is how the snowball effect drains our energy. It takes a single, harmless thought and turns it into a heavy emotional burden. The problem isn't the thought itself, it's our tendency to feed it. Each time we revisit it, analyze it, or fear it, we're adding another layer to the snowball, making it harder to stop. Our thoughts are like clouds, temporary, ever-changing. But when we hold on to one, it thickens into a storm. The art of peace lies in knowing when to let a thought pass before it gathers strength. You don't have to follow every idea that pops into your mind. Not every thought deserves your attention. Imagine standing at the top of a snowy hill, holding a small snowball in your hand. You could choose to keep it still, admire it, then let it melt away. Or you could throw it down the slope and watch it grow, becoming something much bigger and harder to manage. The same is true for your thoughts. The moment you notice them rolling too fast, you can pause, take a breath, and gently stop the motion. One simple practice that helps is awareness. When you notice your mind spiraling, don't judge yourself. Instead, acknowledge what's happening. You might say silently, my thoughts are running. That awareness alone breaks the momentum. It's like catching the snowball before it grows too large. Another practical technique is to write things down. If a thought keeps repeating, take a piece of paper and note it. The act of writing transfers the thought from your head to the page. Once it's out of your mind, it loses its grip. Many people find that as soon as they write a worry down, it stops bothering them, almost as if the paper is now carrying the weight instead of their mind. The snowball effect often disguises itself as productivity. You might think, "I'm just planning ahead," or "I'm trying to solve this problem." But there's a fine line between reflection and rumination. Productive thinking has a direction. It moves towards solutions. Rumination just circles around the problem endlessly, leaving you stuck and tired. To avoid that trap, ask yourself, is this thought helping me, or is it just repeating itself? If it's not helping, it's time to let it go. You can always come back to it later with a calmer, clearer mind. Sometimes the snowball begins with emotion rather than logic. A small disappointment, like someone ignoring your message, might trigger thoughts like, "They must be upset with me," or "I must have done something wrong." Within minutes, your mind builds a whole story that may have no basis in reality. By the time you realize it, you're anxious about a situation that doesn't even exist. The mind can be a skilled storyteller. Awareness is how you stop believing every story it tells. One of Richard Carlson's teachings was simple yet profound. Don't believe everything you think. Thoughts are not facts. They're just passing mental events. The less you attach to them, the more peaceful your inner world becomes. When you start catching your snowballs early, those first few anxious or negative thoughts, you begin to see how much lighter life can feel. Your mind becomes a quieter, more spacious place. You find it easier to sleep, to focus, to enjoy the present moment without the constant noise of unnecessary worry. The key is gentle practice. You won't stop overthinking overnight, but each time you notice and pause, you strengthen your awareness. Over time, your mind learns a new rhythm, one of calm observation instead of endless reaction. So the next time your thoughts start racing, stop and smile. You've caught the snowball before it gains speed. You've chosen peace over panic. Remember, your thoughts don't control you. You control how much attention you give them. Let the unnecessary ones melt away. The peace you're looking for isn't hidden behind perfect circumstances. It's hidden beneath the quiet you create when you stop letting small thoughts grow into mountains. Chapter 4. Become more patient. Patience is one of the quietest and most powerful virtues we can develop. It doesn't shout, it doesn't demand attention, and yet it transforms the way we experience life. When you learn to be patient, the world softens around you. The little things that used to bother you lose their power. You stop rushing through your days, and instead, you start truly living them. But patience doesn't come naturally to most of us. We live in a world that rewards speed, fast service, instant results, immediate gratification. Everything seems to whisper, "Hurry up." We've grown so used to this constant pace that waiting even a little feels like an inconvenience. A slow internet connection frustrates us. A traffic jam feels unbearable. A long line at the grocery store makes us sigh. Yet these are the perfect moments where patience can grow, if we allow it. Richard Carlson often reminded his readers that patience is not just about waiting. It's about how you wait. Anyone can sit through a delay, but not everyone can do it peacefully. True patience is choosing calm over frustration, kindness over irritation, and understanding over control. It's a conscious decision to accept the moment as it is instead of fighting against it. He once shared a simple but touching story from his own life. As a writer, Richard spent many hours in his study working on his books. His young daughters, curious and full of energy, would often wander into the room. Sometimes they wanted to talk. Sometimes they wanted to sit quietly near him. And sometimes they just wanted his attention. Like any parent trying to focus, Richard could have seen these moments as interruptions. But he made a different choice. Instead of scolding or sighing, he reminded himself of something important. His daughters weren't trying to disturb him. They just loved him. Their presence wasn't a distraction. It was a gift. The moments that once seemed like interruptions became some of the sweetest memories of his life. That's what patience does. It helps us see love where we once saw inconvenience. Patience also deepens our relationships. When we stop reacting immediately and instead take a breath, we give others space to be human. We allow them to make mistakes, to speak their truth, to be imperfect without fear of our irritation. This creates an atmosphere of trust and peace. A patient person isn't someone who never feels frustrated. They're simply someone who chooses understanding over reaction. Think about how many arguments, regrets, or misunderstandings could be avoided if we simply paused for a few seconds before speaking. That small moment of stillness gives us the power to respond thoughtfully rather than emotionally. It turns potential conflict into connection. Patience also helps us with ourselves. We can be so harsh on our own progress, constantly criticizing, comparing, and rushing to achieve more. But growth doesn't happen overnight. Every meaningful change in life takes time. Learning a skill, healing from pain, building a habit, nurturing a relationship. Impatience only adds pressure. Patience allows progress to unfold naturally. Try to picture a seed planted in the soil. You can't dig it up every day to check if it's growing. You must water it, give it sunlight, and trust the process. The same goes for your goals and dreams. They need consistency, not constant checking. Patience is the quiet confidence that what you're doing today will bloom in its own time. If you want to practice patience, start small. When you find yourself waiting, at a red light, in a queue, or for a reply, instead of complaining, take a slow, deep breath. Use that pause as a moment to relax your shoulders, unclench your jaw, and remember that not everything needs to happen instantly. You're not losing time. You're learning calm. Patience can also be cultivated through empathy. When someone is slow, forgetful, or clumsy, remind yourself that you've been that person too. Everyone is fighting battles you can't see. A little patience from you might be the kindness that makes their day better. There's a saying, patience is not about waiting, but about the attitude you hold while waiting. That attitude defines your peace. Life will never stop testing your patience, with people, situations, and even yourself. But each test is a chance to grow stronger, calmer, and more loving. In the end, patience is not just a virtue, it's a form of wisdom. It teaches you that everything in life has its rhythm. Flowers don't bloom faster because you demand it. Children don't grow quicker because you're in a hurry. And healing doesn't happen just because you want it to. Everything unfolds exactly when it's meant to. So, the next time you feel your impatience rising, pause and smile. You're being given an opportunity to practice peace. You're learning to let time move as it will, without fighting against it. Because the truth is, when you become more patient, life becomes less about rushing through moments, and more about living fully within them. Chapter 5. Create Patience, Practice. Patience is like a muscle. The more you use it, the stronger it becomes. Yet most of us wait until we're already frustrated before realizing we need it. We treat patience as a reaction instead of a practice. But Richard Carlson taught a different approach, one that's both simple and transformative. He called it patience practice periods. The idea is to consciously train yourself to remain calm, composed, and gentle during moments that might normally test your temper. Just as you might dedicate time each day to exercise your body, you can set aside time to strengthen your patience. You decide in advance. For the next few minutes, no matter what happens, I will stay patient. At first, it might sound strange. Why would anyone deliberately put themselves in situations that require patience? But that's exactly the point. By choosing these moments intentionally, you build emotional control before life forces it on you. It's a peaceful kind of training, not through struggle, but through awareness. Richard once shared how he used this method with his own family. As a father and writer working from home, interruptions were inevitable. One day, while on an important phone call, both of his daughters burst into the room, laughing, talking, and asking questions. It was the perfect recipe for frustration. But instead of reacting, Richard quietly reminded himself, "This is my patience practice period." He took a deep breath, smiled, and responded to his daughters gently. Something beautiful happened. His calm energy settled the room. The girls stopped competing for his attention. began to play quietly, and soon wandered away. His patience had created peace, not only in himself but also around him. That's the magic of patience practice. It's not just about controlling your reactions, it's about creating an atmosphere of calm that influences others too. When you choose to stay composed, the people around you feel it. They begin to mirror your energy. What could have been chaos turns into harmony simply because you decided to practice patience. To start your own practice, choose small, everyday moments. For example, when you're stuck in traffic, instead of tapping your fingers or muttering under your breath, use that time to breathe deeply. When someone speaks slowly or repeats themselves, listen with care rather than irritation. When your internet lags or your coffee order takes too long, remind yourself that this is your chosen moment to stay calm. Over time, these brief practices begin to rewire your mind. You stop seeing delays as punishments and start viewing them as opportunities to grow. Patience becomes a natural response rather than a forced effort. You realize that peace isn't about avoiding frustration, it's about meeting it with grace. Think of it like meditation in motion. You don't need silence or solitude. You can practice patience anywhere, in conversations, while waiting, while dealing with mistakes or misunderstandings. The world is full of chances to strengthen your calmness if you know how to see them. Another powerful benefit of patience practice periods is how they teach you presence. Impatience often comes from living too far ahead, wanting the next thing, the next moment, the next result. But when you slow down, when you choose to be patient, you anchor yourself in now. You stop rushing toward the future and begin to appreciate what's unfolding before you. Here's something to try. For one day, declare that you're going to treat every delay as a teacher. When the line is long, when plans change, when someone moves slower than you'd like, instead of resisting, say quietly, "This is my patience practice." Observe how different your day feels. The situations don't change, but your experience of them does. You start to feel lighter, calmer, more in control of your inner world. Patience practice also softens your relationships. When you're patient, you listen more deeply. You stop interrupting, you allow others to express themselves fully, and you approach conflicts with gentleness. People feel safer around you because they sense that you won't react harshly or impulsively. That safety strengthens connection and trust, both essential ingredients of love. It's important to remember that patience doesn't mean weakness or passivity. It doesn't mean letting others walk over you or avoiding responsibility. True patience is active. It's the deliberate choice to stay steady in situations that might otherwise shake you. It's the art of responding wisely instead of reacting emotionally. So begin small, 5 minutes a day. Tell yourself, for the next 5 minutes, I will not let anything disturb my peace. Gradually, those 5 minutes become 10, then an hour, then a natural way of being. You'll find that life feels slower but richer, quieter but more meaningful. The more you practice patience, the less you'll be controlled by irritation or haste. You'll start to see that every moment has its own rhythm, and that you can flow with it rather than fight against it. And when life inevitably tests you, you'll smile and think, "I've practiced for this," because patience isn't something you're born with. It's something you build, one calm breath at a time. Chapter 6. Be the first one to act loving or reach out. There are moments in every relationship when silence feels heavier than words. Maybe you've had an argument with a friend, a misunderstanding with a sibling, or a falling out with someone you love deeply. Days pass, then weeks, and neither of you reaches out. Pride whispers, "It's not your turn." Ego insists they should apologize first. But in that quiet standoff, love suffers. The truth is, being right never brings the same peace that being loving does. Richard Carlson often reminded his readers that happiness grows in the soil of humility. When you're willing to soften first, to be the one who reaches out, forgives, or says, "I miss you," you free yourself from resentment. You trade tension for peace. You choose love over ego, which is one of the most courageous choices a person can make. He shared a story of a woman who hadn't spoken to her son for 3 long years. Their relationship had broken down over an argument about his wife, a disagreement that started small but grew into years of silence. The woman insisted it wasn't her fault. She told Richard if he cared, he would call me. But Richard gently asked her, "What matters more, being right or being close to your son again?" His words softened her heart. That evening, she picked up the phone and called him. The moment her son heard her voice, tears filled his eyes. They apologized to each other, and years of distance melted away in minutes. That's the quiet power of being the first one to reach out. It doesn't mean you were wrong. It means you care more about connection than conflict. Love doesn't keep score. It heals by giving. It bridges gaps not with logic or pride, but with compassion. In life, waiting for others to make the first move only deepens the distance. Each day that passes makes it harder. The longer you wait, the colder the silence becomes. But one act of love, one phone call, one message, one kind word can break the ice instantly. You don't have to have the perfect apology or the right words. Sometimes all it takes is, "I've been thinking of you." Those few words can open a door that's been locked for far too long. It's easy to think that reaching out makes you weak. But in truth, it makes you strong. It takes far more courage to forgive than to hold a grudge. Pride builds walls. Love builds bridges. When you choose to act lovingly first, you're saying, "This relationship matters more than my ego." That simple mindset can transform your life and the lives of those around you. Think about it. How many relationships could be healed if someone simply took that first small step? How many families could find peace again if one person chose love over stubbornness? Most conflicts don't end because one person wins. They end because one person decides the fight isn't worth losing the connection. Sometimes being the first to reach out doesn't mean making a grand gesture. It can be as simple as sending a text, smiling first, or offering a genuine compliment. It might mean forgiving silently without even announcing it. Every time you choose kindness over pride, you plant a seed of peace. And whether or not the other person responds, you've already set yourself free from bitterness. Love, when practiced in this way, becomes a kind of quiet strength. You stop needing to be understood first. You stop keeping score. Instead, you focus on giving, understanding, and healing. This doesn't mean letting people walk over you or ignoring boundaries. It means choosing softness where the world often chooses hardness. One of the most beautiful things about love is how contagious it is. When you act kindly first, others often follow. Just as anger spreads quickly, so does warmth. A single act of love can shift an entire dynamic. In a home, a friendship, or even a workplace. Your calm tone softens another person's defensiveness. Your openness invites honesty. Your forgiveness inspires reflection. So the next time you find yourself waiting for someone else to make the first move, ask yourself, what would love do right now? Love wouldn't wait. Love wouldn't measure. Love would reach out. Not because it's easy, but because it's right. Maybe you'll send that message today. Maybe you'll call the person you've been missing. Or maybe you'll simply forgive someone silently and let your heart rest. Each of these choices brings peace closer to you. Every time you act with love first, you strengthen your own spirit. Because at the end of the day, life is too short for grudges. Pride may win arguments, but love wins hearts. And when you look back years from now, you won't remember who was right, only who chose kindness first. Be that person. Be the first to act loving, to extend your hand, to make peace. Because love that waits is love that fades. But love that moves, even through discomfort, has the power to heal the world, one heart at a time. Chapter 7. Allow yourself to be bored boredom. The very word makes most people uncomfortable. We live in a world where constant activity feels like a necessity. Every spare second must be filled with scrolling, checking, watching, or doing something productive. Silence feels strange. Stillness feels wrong. But what if boredom isn't something to avoid? What if it's something to welcome, even to treasure? Richard Carlson believed that boredom, when embraced, can become a doorway to peace. He wrote that most of our mental exhaustion doesn't come from doing too much. It comes from never stopping. Our minds are like engines that never turn off. Even when we're resting, we're thinking about what comes next. We rush from one task to another, always craving stimulation, always afraid of slowing down. Yet, in that endless rush, we lose connection with ourselves. Boredom offers a pause, a chance for your mind to breathe. It's the space between thoughts, the quiet moment between one activity and the next. In those pauses, creativity is born, clarity appears. But because we're so used to filling every gap with noise, we rarely give our minds the opportunity to reset. Richard once shared a story from his time training as a psychotherapist. He had moved to a quiet town in Washington and asked his mentor, "What do people here do for fun at night?" "There doesn't seem to be much to do." His mentor smiled and said, "Nothing, and that will be part of your training too." At first, Richard thought it sounded strange, even uncomfortable, but as he practiced simply sitting in the quiet, something profound began to happen. His mind stopped racing. His thoughts slowed. What he once called boredom turned into peace. That's the secret many of us overlook. Boredom is not emptiness. It's space, and in that space, life breathes again. Think of it like the pauses between musical notes. Without silence, music would just be noise. The same is true for life. Without moments of quiet, our days blur together. We stop noticing the small joys, the sound of the wind, the warmth of sunlight, the rhythm of our own breathing. Allowing yourself to be bored gives you the gift of noticing again. You can start small. The next time you're sitting in a waiting room or standing in line, resist the urge to pull out your phone. Just be there. Observe your surroundings. Feel your breath. Let your thoughts come and go without chasing them. At first, your mind might resist. It will look for something to do, something to think about. That's natural. But if you stay with it, you'll start to feel a quiet calm settle in. This calm is more powerful than it seems. When you allow stillness, your creativity blossoms. Many great ideas don't come when you're busy. They appear when your mind is still. Have you ever noticed how inspiration often strikes in the shower, during a walk, or just before sleep? That's because, in those moments, your mind is relaxed enough to listen. The truth is, boredom is not the enemy of productivity. It's the foundation of it. Without rest, even the sharpest mind dulls. Without silence, even the wisest voice becomes drowned out by noise. When you stop constantly entertaining yourself, you give your mind a chance to reset, to heal, and to think clearly again. There's another lesson hidden in boredom: the ability to be content without constant excitement. Many people spend their lives chasing something more. More success, more thrill, more recognition. But peace doesn't live in more. It lives in enough. Allowing yourself to sit quietly, to do nothing, is a way of saying, "This moment is enough." Try setting aside a few minutes each day for stillness. No phone, no music, no tasks, just you and the present moment. Sit outside, watch the clouds drift, or listen to the hum of life around you. At first, your mind will protest. It will remind you of all the things you should be doing. But if you gently let those thoughts pass, you'll discover something rare: contentment without effort. Our culture teaches us that boredom is wasted time, but in truth, it's sacred time. It's where rest begins and wisdom grows. It's where the mind resets and the heart realigns. The more you practice embracing stillness, the more peaceful your life becomes. So the next time you find yourself with nothing to do, resist the temptation to fill the space. Don't reach for your phone or rush to the next distraction. Instead, let yourself be bored, truly bored. Sit with it, feel it. Listen to what your mind says in the quiet. You might be surprised at what you hear, because when you stop running from stillness, you begin to realize something beautiful. Boredom isn't a lack of life. It's the gentle return to it. Chapter 8. Repeat to yourself, life is not an emergency. Modern life moves at a breathtaking speed. We rush from one task to the next, chasing deadlines, goals, and expectations as if every moment were a race. The alarm rings, and before the day even begins, our minds are already running, checking messages, planning, worrying, hurrying. We live as though every small delay or obstacle were a crisis. But the truth, as Richard Carlson beautifully reminds us, is simple and freeing. Life is not an emergency. Most of the stress we carry doesn't come from what happens to us. It comes from how we label it. We turn minor inconveniences into urgent matters. A missed call becomes a problem. A small mistake feels catastrophic. We say, I have to finish this now. I can't be late. I must fix this immediately. But most of the time, nothing terrible will happen if we simply pause. The world won't fall apart if we slow down. Think about how often we treat everyday situations as though they were life or death events. Traffic jams, long lines, technical glitches, none of these truly endanger us, yet they trigger frustration, anxiety, and irritation. We clench our jaws, tighten our shoulders, and let our peace slip away. It's not the situation that steals our calm. It's the story we tell ourselves about it. Richard shared the story of one of his clients, a man who lived every day as if the clock were his enemy. He believed that unless he worked relentlessly, he would fall behind. He measured his worth by his productivity. But no matter how much he achieved, he never felt caught up, because he was racing against an imaginary deadline. Over time, the constant pressure began to drain him, physically and emotionally. When Richard gently reminded him, "Your life is not an emergency," it was like a breath of air after years of holding his breath. Slowly, the man began to work with more balance, realizing that slowing down didn't mean falling behind. It meant finally being present. Another story was of a woman who prided herself on keeping her home spotless. Every morning, she rushed to clean before her family woke up. If something was out of place, she felt anxious and restless. Her pursuit of perfection turned ordinary mornings into daily emergencies. Over time, the stress began affecting her health. Richard helped her see that the urgency she felt was self-created. No one demanded that her home be perfect. She had simply convinced herself that it had to be. When she began repeating the phrase, "Life is not an emergency," her days began to shift. She started leaving dishes in the sink sometimes, laughing at small messes, and focusing more on enjoying her family than controlling her environment. This simple truth, that life is not an emergency, can transform the way you experience everything. The next time you catch yourself rushing or panicking, stop and say it out loud. Life is not an emergency. Feel the weight lift from your shoulders. Notice how your breathing slows. Remind yourself that most of what feels urgent today won't even matter a month from now. Of course, there are times in life when true emergencies arise, moments that require immediate action. But those are rare. Most of our daily emergencies are imagined, shaped by pressure and perfectionism. We've been conditioned to believe that busyness equals importance, but that belief only traps us in stress. Peace comes from realizing that you can still be responsible, productive, and successful without rushing through your life. When you stop treating every task like an emergency, something beautiful happens. You begin to enjoy the journey. You start noticing small details you once ignored. The taste of your coffee, the sound of laughter, the beauty of sunlight spilling through a window. These quiet moments are what life is made of, yet we miss them when we're always in a hurry. Try this small practice. Throughout the day, whenever you feel tension rising, pause and whisper to yourself, "This is not an emergency." Whether you're stuck in traffic, waiting for a reply, or running late, say it again until your body relaxes. You'll be amazed how this simple phrase can reset your perspective. Peace isn't something you find by fixing everything. It's something you feel when you stop rushing through it all. Life unfolds in its own timing. Things get done when they need to. The sun rises and sets without your help. You don't have to force it all. You simply have to trust the rhythm of life, so slow down, breathe deeply, smile more. When you stop living as if you're late for everything, you realize that you were never behind. You were just too hurried to notice how far you'd already come. Life is not an emergency. It's a gift. And the best way to honor that gift is to live it calmly, gratefully, and fully present. Chapter 9. Seek first to understand. Most people listen with the intent to reply, not to understand. We hear words, but our minds are already forming responses, defending, explaining, or waiting for our turn to speak. True listening, however, is something much deeper. It's not about waiting for silence so you can talk again. It's about opening your heart and mind to truly see the world through another person's eyes. Richard Carlson often emphasized that one of the simplest ways to create harmony in relationships, whether at home, at work, or within friendships, is to practice the art of understanding first. He believed that when people feel understood, they naturally relax. They stop defending themselves and begin to open up. In that space, connection replaces conflict. Yet this is easier said than done. Our egos crave to be heard, validated, and proven right. When someone disagrees with us, we often jump to explain our side rather than trying to see theirs. But if we pause and if we listen without judgment, we discover that understanding doesn't mean agreeing. It simply means caring enough to see from another perspective. Richard once told the story of a married couple who had been arguing for years about money. The wife constantly saved, worried about the future, while the husband spent freely, wanting to enjoy life. Each believed the other was wrong. Their arguments became so routine that they stopped really hearing each other. When they came to Richard for guidance, he asked them to try something different, to listen completely before responding. No interruptions, no defending, just listening. At first it was awkward. Silence felt strange. But then something remarkable happened. When the husband truly listened, he realized his wife's fear wasn't about control, it was about security. She had grown up in financial uncertainty, and saving gave her peace. When the wife listened, she understood that her husband's spending wasn't careless. It came from love. He wanted to create joyful memories while they could. The moment understanding entered the room, their resentment began to fade. The problem was never money, it was the absence of empathy. This story reminds us that most conflicts aren't about the surface issue. They're about the feelings underneath: fear, insecurity, pride, or longing. When we focus only on being right, we miss those hidden emotions. But when we choose to understand, we reach the heart of the matter. You can practice this in your own life starting today. The next time someone speaks, especially when it's something emotional or critical, resist the urge to interrupt. Instead, give them your full attention. Maintain eye contact. Listen not only to their words, but to their tone, their emotions, and what's left unsaid. Then, before responding, take a breath and ask yourself, do I truly understand what this person is feeling? That small pause changes everything. When people feel heard, they soften. They become less defensive. Conversations that might have turned into arguments often dissolve into understanding. And the best part is, once you offer that gift to others, they naturally begin to offer it back. Understanding breeds understanding. This principle applies beyond relationships, too. It works in workplaces, communities, and even within yourself. Sometimes you need to seek first to understand you, your fears, your triggers, your patterns. Instead of judging your emotions, try understanding them. Ask yourself why you react the way you do, what you're protecting, what you're afraid to lose. That self-compassion builds inner peace, which naturally extends to how you treat others. One of the greatest misunderstandings in life is the belief that being understood must come first. We think, I'll listen when they listen to me. But someone has to take the first step, and when you do, you shift the dynamic entirely. You turn confrontation into connection. You stop seeing conversations as battles to win and start seeing them as bridges to build. To seek first to understand doesn't mean letting others walk over you. It doesn't mean you never express your feelings or set boundaries. It simply means you lead with empathy. You give others the same grace you wish to receive. And when you approach life this way, peace follows naturally. The next time you find yourself in disagreement, remember this: you don't need to prove your intelligence or superiority through words. Wisdom isn't about winning arguments, it's about nurturing understanding. Sometimes silence, patience, and genuine curiosity speak louder than any defense ever could. So take a deep breath, listen deeply. Look beyond the words to the heart behind them. When you choose to understand first, you transform your relationships, not by changing others, but by changing the energy you bring to them. In the end, understanding is love in action. It's how you show respect, compassion, and peace all at once. And when you practice it, you'll find that the world, and the people in it, start to make a lot more sense. Chapter 10. Choose being kind over being right. There's a quiet freedom that comes from realizing you don't always have to be right. For most of us, this truth takes years to understand. We spend so much of our lives trying to prove our point, in conversations, in relationships, even in small, everyday disagreements. The desire to be right is deeply human. It feeds our pride and gives us a sense of control. But often, it costs us something far greater: peace. Richard Carlson often reminded his readers that being right rarely brings happiness, but being kind always does. When you insist on winning an argument, you might gain the satisfaction of victory, but you lose the warmth of connection. And when the moment passes, you're left wondering, was it really worth it? There's a story Richard shared from his own marriage. One evening, he and his wife were discussing a business idea that eventually turned into a great success. In his excitement, Richard began telling others how he had come up with it. He didn't mean to take all the credit, it just slipped out. His wife heard him but said nothing. She didn't correct him, didn't interrupt, didn't remind him that the idea had actually been hers. Later, when Richard realized his mistake, he apologized. She smiled gently and said, "It doesn't matter. I'm just happy it worked." Her kindness turned what could have been a moment of tension into one of love. That's the power of choosing kindness over being right. Every day, life gives us countless opportunities to make this choice. Someone cuts you off in traffic. A coworker takes credit for your effort. A friend misunderstands your words. In each of these moments, the ego rises quickly, ready to defend, to argue, to correct. But if you take a deep breath and ask yourself, what's more important right now, my peace or my pride? The answer becomes clear. Peace always feels better. Choosing kindness doesn't mean letting others walk over you or pretending you don't have an opinion. It means deciding that maintaining harmony is more valuable than proving superiority. It's not weakness. It's wisdom. It's the understanding that ego wants to win, but the heart wants to connect. And connection, in the end, is what truly nourishes us. Think about the times you've won an argument. You may have felt powerful in the moment, but what followed? Usually tension, distance, or regret. Now think about the times you've chosen to stay silent, to let go, or to respond gently instead. That quiet sense of peace afterward, that's real strength. That's emotional maturity. The truth is, no one likes being corrected all the time. Even if you are right, pointing out someone's mistake can make them feel small or defensive. Kindness, on the other hand, builds bridges. It allows people to feel safe around you. It invites honesty and openness. When you choose to be kind, you make others feel valued, and that's something no argument can ever achieve. One of the simplest ways to practice this is to pause before responding. When someone disagrees with you, instead of immediately defending your point, take a breath. Ask yourself, will proving myself right make this situation better, or just louder? Often, silence or a soft word speaks far more powerfully than correction. You can also reframe your interactions through empathy. Remember that everyone you meet is carrying invisible struggles. Sometimes their defensiveness isn't about you at all. It's about what they're battling inside. When you respond with kindness instead of irritation, you give them a little more space to breathe. You remind them, and yourself, that love is more important than being correct. It's also helpful to realize that being right doesn't always mean you're wise. Wisdom is knowing when to let go. There's immense strength in being able to say, "It's okay, I don't need to win this one." When you stop fighting for every point, life becomes lighter. Conversations become gentler. Relationships heal faster. Imagine how different the world would feel if more people valued kindness over pride. Fewer arguments, fewer grudges, fewer walls. More understanding, more compassion, more peace. Every time you choose kindness, you contribute to that gentler world. One small act at a time. So the next time you feel that urge to correct someone or prove your perspective, pause, smile. Remember that you don't need to win this moment to feel whole. Sometimes peace is found not in the victory of your words, but in the softness of your heart. Because in the end, being right might feed your ego for a moment, but being kind nourishes your soul forever. Chapter 11. Develop your own helping ritual. Kindness doesn't always need grand gestures. It doesn't require wealth, fame, or the perfect moment. Often, the simplest acts, a smile, a kind word, a helping hand, carry the deepest impact. Richard Carlson believed that developing small, consistent rituals of helping others could quietly transform not just their lives, but yours as well. We tend to think of kindness as something spontaneous, something we do only when the opportunity arises. But what if we treated it as a daily practice, a conscious part of our routine, like brushing our teeth or having morning coffee? Imagine if helping became as natural as breathing. The beauty of a helping ritual is that it makes compassion intentional. It reminds you to give even on days when you're busy or distracted. Richard once shared a story from his own neighborhood in Northern California. He lived in a peaceful town surrounded by hills and trees, but something always bothered him: the litter scattered along the roads. For a while, he simply noticed it and moved on, waiting for someone else to take care of it. Then one day, he decided to stop waiting. Every time he went for a walk, he began picking up trash along the way. It wasn't a grand project, just a quiet, consistent habit. At first, people looked at him curiously. But after a few weeks, something beautiful began to happen. Others started doing it too. One man stopped Richard one day and said, "I've been seeing you do this for weeks, and it inspired me to start picking up litter near my own house." That's the ripple effect of kindness. 1. Small act creates waves that reach far beyond what you can see. Your helping ritual doesn't have to look like Richard's. It can be anything that brings light into someone else's day. Maybe it's holding the door open for strangers, checking in regularly on a lonely neighbor, sending encouraging messages to friends, or volunteering a few hours each month. What matters isn't the scale of your gesture, it's the consistency behind it. Think of it like planting seeds. Each small act may seem insignificant at first, but over time they grow into something beautiful. Helping others not only uplifts them, it also nourishes your own spirit. It reminds you that you are part of something larger, a web of connection and care that makes life meaningful. When you help regularly, something subtle but powerful begins to shift inside you. Your focus moves away from what you lack to what you can give. The world begins to feel less about competition and more about compassion. And as you give more freely, you start to receive in ways that can't be measured, in peace, gratitude, and joy. A helping ritual also teaches humility. Sometimes your kindness will go unnoticed or unacknowledged. But that's okay, because the purpose isn't recognition, it's contribution. True service comes from the heart, not the hope of reward. When you give without expecting anything in return, you touch a level of fulfillment that achievements alone can never bring. Try this. Choose one small helping act that you can do daily or weekly. Make it simple and sustainable. Maybe it's offering a genuine compliment each day, donating a few items you no longer need, or spending a few minutes listening to someone who feels unheard. Over time, this ritual becomes part of who you are, a quiet expression of love in motion. The most powerful rituals are those rooted in awareness. When you're out in the world, pay attention to where kindness is needed. It might be a stressed cashier, a tired parent, or a friend pretending they're fine. You'll start noticing that opportunities to help are everywhere. The world doesn't lack kindness. It just waits for people willing to start. Helping others also reminds you of gratitude. When you see someone struggling, you realize how much you have to be thankful for. Gratitude and kindness go hand in hand. One nurtures the other. The more grateful you feel, the more generous you become, and the more generous you are, the deeper your gratitude grows. One person, one small ritual, can make a lasting difference. The world becomes a little brighter every time someone chooses compassion over indifference. So begin today. Don't wait for a perfect plan or the right time. Just start where you are, with what you have. Because when you make helping others a habit, you're not just changing someone else's day, you're changing your own life. You're shaping your heart into something softer, stronger, and more open. And in doing so, you become a quiet light in a world that often forgets how powerful small kindness can be. Chapter 12. Argue for your limitations and they are yours. The stories we tell ourselves shape the lives we live. Every thought, every belief, every quiet sentence we repeat in our minds builds the boundaries of what we think we can or cannot do. Richard Carlson often said, "If you argue for your limitations, they are yours." In other words, when you keep insisting that you can't, you won't. We all have moments when self-doubt creeps in. Maybe you've said things like, "I'm just not good at this," "I'll never be confident," or "that kind of success isn't for me." Those words might feel harmless, but over time, they become the walls of your own mental prison. The more you defend your weaknesses, the more real they become. It's not the challenges outside of you that hold you back most. It's the ones you create inside your own mind. The moment you begin to argue for your limitations, you hand them power. You start collecting evidence that supports your excuses, ignoring anything that contradicts them. Before long, you begin living small, not because you have to, but because you've convinced yourself that you must. Richard once worked with a woman who believed she could never have a healthy relationship. Her past was filled with heartbreak, and she had built an identity around disappointment. She would laugh off her struggles, saying things like, "I'm always the one who gets hurt," or "I just attract the wrong people." Over time, these phrases became her truth. They weren't just words anymore. They were beliefs that shaped every new relationship she entered. When Richard challenged her thinking, she resisted at first. "But it's true," she insisted. "It always happens to me." That's the tricky part about self-imposed limits. They often feel like facts. Yet when she started to look closer, she realized that it wasn't fate holding her back. It was her own belief that she was destined to fail. With gentle practice, she began replacing her self-defeating thoughts with new ones. "I'm learning how to love in a healthy way. I'm worthy of kindness. Good people exist, and I'm ready to meet them." Slowly, her mindset shifted, and so did her life. Our thoughts create our reality far more than we realize. When you argue for your limitations, you strengthen them. When you argue for your potential, you expand it. Every "I can't" blocks possibility. Every "I'll try" opens the door to growth. Of course, changing how you think doesn't mean pretending life is perfect. It means refusing to let fear and negativity define what's possible. The first step is awareness. Start paying attention to the language you use when you talk about yourself. Do you often say things like, "I always mess things up," or "I'll never change"? If so, notice those words without judgment. Then challenge them. Ask yourself, is that really true? Or is it just something I've repeated for so long that I've started to believe it? You don't need to go from doubt to unshakable confidence overnight. Even small shifts make a difference. For example, instead of saying, "I'm terrible at public speaking," try, "I'm learning to get more comfortable speaking in front of others." That small change moves you from limitation to possibility. It opens space for growth instead of closing it off. Think of your mind as a garden. Your words are the seeds you plant. If you keep planting seeds of doubt, fear, and negativity, that's what will grow. But if you plant hope, courage, and belief, your life will begin to bloom in unexpected ways. One of the most liberating truths you can accept is that you are not your past. You are not your mistakes, your fears, or your old stories. You are the awareness behind them. And awareness has the power to rewrite the narrative at any time. So the next time you catch yourself saying, "I can't," stop and ask, "What if I can?" That one question alone can break years of conditioning. Because when you stop arguing for your limitations, you give your potential a chance to speak. Start replacing self-doubt with gentle encouragement. Speak to yourself the way you would to someone you love. Celebrate small victories. Forgive your mistakes. Believe that growth is always possible, because it is. Every time you choose belief over limitation, you take one step closer to the life you were meant to live. In the end, the walls that hold you back aren't made of stone. They're made of words. And the key to freedom has been in your hands all along. Stop arguing for what you can't do and start standing up for what you can, because once you stop defending your limitations, life begins to open up. And you'll realize that the only thing that was ever truly in your way was the story you kept telling yourself. Chapter 13. Just for fun, agree with criticism directed towards you, then watch it. Go away. Few things sting more than criticism. Even when it's small, even when it's delivered kindly, our natural reaction is to defend ourselves. We want to explain, justify, and protect our pride. But what if, instead of defending, you simply agreed? What if, rather than resisting criticism, you embraced it, just for fun, and watched how quickly it lost its power? Richard Carlson offered this playful yet profound approach as a way to free yourself from unnecessary stress. His advice wasn't about letting others walk over you, but about breaking the cycle of defensiveness that steals your peace. When you stop fighting every piece of criticism, you stop giving it control. You reclaim your calm, your confidence, and your energy. The idea sounds simple, but it's deeply counterintuitive. Imagine someone saying, "You talk too much," or "You're always late." Your instinct might be to argue, "That's not true," or "You don't understand my situation." But what happens if you respond with, "You're right, I do talk a lot sometimes," or "You're right, I need to get better at being on time"? The energy instantly shifts. The tension melts. There's no argument left to feed. Richard once shared a story about how he learned this lesson himself. One day his wife told him, gently but honestly, that he sometimes talked too much. His first instinct was to defend himself, to explain why he did it, to prove she was mistaken. But instead, he decided to try something different. He smiled and said, "You're right, I really do talk a lot." To his surprise, the moment he said it, the air softened. His wife laughed, nodded, and the conversation moved on peacefully. What could have turned into an argument instead became a moment of connection. That's the power of agreement. Criticism feeds on resistance. When you stop resisting, it loses all its strength. Most people criticize because they want to be heard, not because they want to hurt. When you acknowledge their words, even partially, you satisfy that need. You turn confrontation into understanding. Of course, this doesn't mean you should agree with cruel or unfair accusations. It means that when someone points out something minor, or even slightly true, you can choose to accept it gracefully instead of taking it personally. The goal isn't submission, it's peace. You're not giving them power. You're taking back your own by refusing to be disturbed. Try this the next time someone criticizes you over something small. Instead of explaining or defending, simply agree in a light, kind way. Say, "You might be right," or "That's a good point." Notice how quickly the tension fades. You'll often find that the other person relaxes too. What could have been a conflict becomes a simple exchange, and sometimes even a laugh. This practice also teaches humility. It reminds you that you don't have to be perfect to be happy. You can be flawed and still at peace. You can make mistakes and still be worthy of love and respect. When you stop taking criticism as a personal attack, you start to see it as just another part of life, sometimes useful, sometimes not, but never worth losing your calm over. Another benefit of this mindset is that it strengthens your confidence. At first glance, it might seem like agreeing with criticism would make you look weak, but in truth, it does the opposite. Only someone secure in themselves can respond with grace instead of defensiveness. Agreeing with criticism isn't surrender. It's mastery over your own ego. Think about it. When you no longer react to every negative comment, you become untouchable. Your peace no longer depends on others' opinions. You begin to live from the inside out, grounded in quiet self-assurance. Life will always bring criticism, from friends, co-workers, even strangers. Some of it will be fair, some won't, but you always have a choice in how you respond. You can defend, argue, and drain your energy, or you can smile, agree lightly, and move on. One path brings tension. The other brings freedom. So, the next time someone criticizes you, pause for a moment before reacting. Take a breath, soften your heart, and, just for fun, agree. Watch how quickly the situation transforms. What once felt like an attack becomes an opportunity for peace, maybe even laughter. Remember, criticism only has the power you give it. When you stop resisting, it stops hurting. And when you can accept even your flaws with grace, you discover something extraordinary. That peace isn't found in being perfect, but in being perfectly okay with who you are. Conclusion. As you reach the end of this journey, take a moment to pause. Not to rush to the next task, not to tick off another goal, but simply to breathe. You've walked through lessons about patience, kindness, peace, and perspective, and perhaps you've begun to see that a calm, meaningful life isn't built by changing everything around you. It's built by changing how you see it. The heart of Richard Carlson's message is beautifully simple. Life is not an emergency. Yet so many of us live as if it is. We hurry through our days, treating every inconvenience like a crisis, every imperfection like a failure, every delay like lost time. But what this book reminds us is that most of what feels urgent isn't. Most of what feels heavy can be lightened. And most of what feels complicated can be made simple if we're willing to slow down and see differently. Every chapter has been a gentle invitation to let go, to soften, to breathe. Don't sweat the small stuff isn't just a clever saying. It's a way of living. It means giving yourself permission to stop turning small moments into big problems. It means allowing peace to enter where stress once lived. It means choosing love, patience, and gratitude, not because life is perfect, but because they make life feel lighter when it isn't. In learning not to sweat the small stuff, you learn to love more deeply. You begin to listen before speaking, to forgive before judging, to see others not as obstacles but as fellow travelers on their own imperfect journeys. You start to understand that the world softens the moment you do. You've also learned that perfection is not the goal. Peace is. True beauty lies in imperfection, in the uneven rhythm of a day, in the flaws of a handmade object, in the humanness of a mistake. When you stop chasing perfection, you start noticing the quiet grace that's always been around you. Life becomes less about fixing and more about appreciating. Patience, too, becomes your ally. You start realizing that not everything needs to happen now. Growth, healing, understanding, they all take time. The more patient you are, the more peaceful you feel. The world still moves at its own pace, but you no longer fight it. You flow with it. And when you choose kindness over being right, when you reach out first instead of waiting, when you decide to forgive instead of holding on, life opens up in ways you never imagined. The more you give, the more you receive, not in material things, but in inner calm, connection, and quiet joy. Perhaps the greatest gift of all these lessons is the awareness that you have control over your inner world. You can't stop every storm, but you can choose not to let it enter your heart. You can't make life perfect, but you can meet it with grace. You can't silence every critic, but you can choose peace over pride. As you carry these lessons forward, remember that transformation isn't found in grand moments. It's hidden in the small ones. In how you react to a delay, how you speak to someone who's hurt you, how you treat yourself after a mistake. These small choices are what shape the quality of your life. Every time you pause before reacting, every time you choose patience over frustration, every time you take a breath instead of rushing, you're living the essence of don't sweat the small stuff. You're saying yes to peace. So, as you step back into your world, take these gentle truths with you. Life is not an emergency. You don't have to be perfect to be happy. Most things are small stuff, and when you stop sweating them, life becomes soft, kind, and full of meaning. Slow down when you can. Appreciate the quiet moments. Smile at strangers. Forgive quickly. Love deeply. Speak gently. And when life starts to feel heavy, remind yourself. You've already learned how to put the weight down. Because in the end, peace isn't something you find somewhere else. It's something you create, one calm choice at a time. So breathe, be kind, and let go. The small stuff will always be there, but you don't have to carry it anymore.